Thanks for joining us this afternoon on Indivisible with John Stubbins. I'm John Stubbins. Welcome in, America. You know, New York City, as you know, people are leaving in droves. They just not going to put up with what de Blasio and Cuomo are putting out. They want to drive taxes. They want reparations for Black Lives Matter. They want to have, wealth tax on top of another tax that de Blasio's wife has come up with. And after everything that we've experienced with the shutdowns and with the virus and the damage that Cuomo did, with our nursing homes, with our assisted living facilities, you would think that, Cuomo and de Blasio would get the hint that they need to make some changes, but nope, they're not. Instead, we've got people leaving in droves. Myself, actually, living in New York City for 3 years while I studied. It's disturbing. It's really bad for the city overall. Who knows if these people will want to come back? But nevertheless, you have people like Cuomo, like de Blasio, like Jerry Nadler, and like AOC, who are in New York City doing their thing, doing their best to make life difficult for New Yorkers, to make them leave, to make them not want to be there. Riots, burning, murder rates going up, getting rid of everything that they can to keep their people safe. And speaking of AOC, I have today, my guest is John Cummings. John is running against AOC. He's a Republican running in New York's 14th district. And I want to welcome onto the show now. Welcome in, John. How you doing?
I'm doing great, John. Thank you for having me.
We're thrilled to have you, John. I know that you're a retired NYPD officer. I know that you did and still do play-by-play for Fairfield University, calling basketball games, women and men. Gets broadcast to ESPN3. And I also know you're obviously a teacher, a civics teacher up in the Bronx, and you're a native, born and bred in that area, in that district. So you're a New Yorker through and through, and we're thrilled that you're here. We're thrilled that you're running against AOC, and we just would love it if you could just take her down. Can you get rid of her for us, John?
Well, we're certainly trying, and it's been going really well. The district is heavily Democrat. Everybody knows that. But as I've been telling people since I got into this race 15 months ago, it's not heavily socialist. This is a working class district, private homeowners, small business owners, people who all they want from the government really is, look, maintain social order, give us some decent schools, and we'll take care of the rest. I think the left resents the middle class more than anything. And it's one of the reasons I really got into this. I despise socialism. It's antithetical to everything we believe in as a nation and as a people. So I decided that this was my time. I got pushed in a little by my students. A lot of my students for years, when Mr. Cummings, you got to run, this is your thing. and I finally said, you know what? This is my shot. I'm 60 years old. I don't want to be sitting around 10 years from now when I'm 70 saying, you know what? I should have run. So this is my shot.
That's great. That's great. And, look, you have a decorated career, multiple accommodations after you retired from the NYPD. I know that you had suffered a serious injury. What happened to you, injury-wise?
It was a knee injury. I was a member of the Harbor Unit, which is the Marine unit. Very elite group. Does a lot of security work for everything, the UN to the tunnel vents to the president coming in to the airports. Did a lot of work with the DEA and customs. We do a lot of things. And unfortunately, I went through the floor in the engine room of one of the boats. And, God had other plans for me. And that's just the way I view it. And that's the way I have to view it. And I've been teaching locally here at St. Raymond's, which is where I went to high school for the last 22 years.
How's your knee now?
It is what it is. I'm 60. How's my knee, right? How's everybody's knee at 60? But yeah, I have my issues. I still, because it was such a blunt trauma injury, to this day, I can't kneel on my right knee. I never got full range of motion. I can't put any pressure on it. But I mean, I get around fine. Everything's good.
Yeah, and by the way, I understand that when you get past 40 or 50, these when you're young, you don't realize that some of these injuries from sports and work can creep up on you later in life. You learn to appreciate that as you get older.
Yeah.
I injured my back when I was in the military, and it still hurts me, but I've just learned to live with it. There's nothing else you can do. I mean, what are you going to do, right? I can't complain. I'm certainly not going to join Al Sharpton and his grievance industry.
No, there's a buddy of mine. We're all suffering from the same thing as you talked about, playing sports, especially here in the city, playing on cement for all of those years. And we were kidding around about a class action suit against Converse for making us play in those Chuck Taylors for all those years. That was pretty rough.
Yeah, we all had those, brother. Hey,
yeah.
I actually found a pair. My daughter and I went shopping a few years ago, and I actually bought a pair. I got her a pair too of old Chucks. Yeah, they were nostalgic. I hadn't even seen a pair or worn a pair since I was a kid.
Yeah, they're very stylish now, but never good for basketball.
No.
But it was what you had. So yeah,
terrible for the ankle, right?
Yeah,
terrible.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to let everybody know that John is a father of two sons himself, and John followed in his father's footsteps, which is amazing. And by the way, kudos to you for once you retired for going and getting your degree at Fordham. Congratulations.
I went back. They kind of, like I said, I got the deck reshuffled. So I went back, finished up, was very fortunate. I got into the broadcasting and then back to teaching. You know what it is? I believe that God put me on this earth to serve. So I served in the police department. I came out. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I ended up serving, the community by teaching at St. Raymond's. Like I said, I'm there 22 years. So I have a 30-year plus record of service to the people of New York City, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, well, you should be. That's a lot to be proud of. And think about all the people that you've affected, the lives that you've touched, not only as a teacher, as a broadcaster, as a police officer, law enforcement. You've touched so many lives in New York City. And look, like I tell people, I lived in New York City for 3 years, and I lived over in Brooklyn Heights, and studied in Manhattan. So I'd take the subway ride short over to Henry Street, to the old St. George Hotel over there in Brooklyn Heights, and look, when I was there, Giuliani was the mayor, and New York City was a different place. Look, New York City, and I was talking to Kathy Bernstein, who's running for Congress in New York against Jerry Nadler. I was kind of telling her the same thing. No matter who's the mayor, New York has its problems. However, the problems that are existing now are problems that didn't exist when Giuliani was the mayor. He took care of a lot of these issues, and now the problems that New York is experiencing are just self-inflicted, unnecessary because of poor leadership from the state, with Cuomo all the way down to de Blasio. And it breaks your heart, because that New Yorkers that love the city, that thrive in the city when the city's doing its thing and it's in a groove and they don't have these problems, that they don't want this crap. They just don't.
What's the sad part is that we were where we are now before, and we found our way out of it. Good leadership, the change of approach when it came to policing, the upping of the budget. There's a lot of people don't know this. Back in the 80s and early 90s, before Mayor Giuliani came around, only 5% of New York City's budget went to law enforcement. 5%. I mean, that's the government's main role, is to maintain social order, right? And you're doing 5%. It's not enough. So there was a change in approach. The mayor went after quality of life issues, which was a big part of all of this. They shut that down. The squeegee men, just the general filth of the city, if you will, that all went away. And that was a big part of it. But they did readjust and reform the police department, but they also upped the budget to, by the time Mayor Bloomberg left, it was 8%. and even 8%, if you think about it's low. Now they've dialed it back to about 6%. And, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez said, well, you know what? We need to experiment. And I pointed out to her, I said, look, I was in the last experiment. I'm telling you, it doesn't work. We were doing over 2,000 murders a year, 100,000 robberies, 146,000 stolen cars. We got it all the way down to 295 murders in a place where on any given day, there's probably 11, 12 million people here. 295, not even a murder a day in a place with 11, 12 million people. We were all, and now we're going to go back up to 400 or 500, and it's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And it's sickening. Everybody saw the videos, the news coverage over the summer, all the way back to even last summer when that first criminal decided to throw water on an NYPD officer, and de Blasio says, no problem. He looks the other way. Then it's more water. Then it's milk. Then it's urine. Then it's bricks to the head, right? So, this keeps going further and further and further. And now shootings are way up in New York City. Looting, burning, robbery, assaults. The amount of video that I've seen, I just saw another one last night where an elderly person, in their 70s, 80s, they're walking down the street with a walker, not bothering anybody. They're by themselves, and out of nowhere, some BLM thug comes up walking the other way, knocks them out to the ground, and keeps walking. And I saw last night that firemen, there was like 5, 6 of them. They saw this happen, and I think because they know that the NYPD are hamstrung and de Blasio has handcuffed them from doing their job, that they say, well, you know what? There's no bail anyway. They're not prosecuting anybody. We'll start taking care of the thugs ourselves. Okay? Now, that's okay. If we're going to play by those rules, then everybody plays by those rules. Okay? But when these thugs start crying to mama because they're getting their butts beat by citizens that have had enough of their crap, then they're going to start crying to de Blasio, right?
Yeah, well, last year you mentioned the water, the buckets of water. That was a dress rehearsal. That's all that was. They wanted to see how far they could push it. And they found out. And when you have a city where the mayor doesn't support the police department, you will always have chaos. You have to be on the same page. I've heard Mayor Giuliani say that. You have to be on the same page. You might differ on some things, but it's obvious that the mayor and the governor and really everybody on the left, they have no respect for the rule of law whatsoever. It's from the border on down. I mean, you can look at every level. They try to undermine the process at the border. They try to make the border agents and the ICE agents look like thugs. Yep. Then they got to the bail reform up in New York, which has just been catastrophic. If I tell you what goes on, I'll give you a great example. In the first 6 months of 2020, there were about 2,150 arrests for illegal possession of a gun, right? That's supposed to be a mandatory sentence. It used to be a mandatory year. So 2,150 in the first 6 months, 1,952 of those people are back out in the street. So you have people, committing crimes and have guns, and they're going right back out the door. That's become a revolving door. Then you get it down to the city level where they dismantled the plainclothes anti-crime unit, which is really responsible for taking most of the guns off the street. And this is what we have. And it gets worse and worse and worse. And all you really need, and we're gonna request this next week, at least I am. Our campaign is going to ask Mayor de Blasio and Commissioner Shea to reinstate the plainclothes anti-crime unit before they reopen schools. The streets are not safe. And to flood the streets with young children and teenagers when the streets are not safe, I've been there before. It's not a good situation. In fact, it's a horrible situation. And you have many parents, especially parents of high school age students, they are choosing to go with remote learning, not because of the coronavirus, but because the streets aren't safe, and that's outrageous.
Exactly. And we talked about this, like I said, when I had Kathy Bernstein on. we've been getting the reports. We're still getting them. There are parents, and you described it perfectly, John. There are parents that, number one, they're not going to allow their kids to go to, they'd rather homeschool them, number one. Number two, at night, you've got parents sitting in front of the door, they're watching television with a gun or a shotgun on their lap, waiting on BLM to come and, try to thrash their house or break in or burn it or whatever. We just don't know what they're going to do. And they'll have their kids sleeping down in the basement because they're terrified to have their kids upstairs. I mean, this is just insanity. And, to me, de Blasio and his wife, and I'm going to include his wife in on this because, she wants to redistribute wealth. That's her thing, and she's in his ear about reparations and wealth redistribution. And the taxpayers of New York, they're already taxed higher than anybody in the country, and they just can't take anymore. And so when we see people leaving, just like they are in San Francisco and Los Angeles, they're leaving in droves. And, it's disturbing when you have all that going on, and you would think that you would want to at least keep your taxpayers happy, okay? Because these thugs don't pay taxes, and yet
none of them get paid.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones causing anarchy. They're the ones that are causing our justice system to be overloaded in our prisons and our jails, and our But prosecutors have to prosecute, and prosecutors in these liberal cities like New York City, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, they won't prosecute. They're all in with these protesters. I won't even call them protesters. They're all in with these thugs. They're all in with these criminals because they believe that they have this utopia in mind where criminals will just magically start to behave, right? Such lunacy. And when you have a no bail law in New York City that's starting to spread, this philosophy that's twisted and stupid, quite frankly, the criminals know this. They know, like you said, they tested the waters with the police last summer with the water and the water bottles and the buckets and the milk to see how much they could get away with. This summer, it's bricks. This summer, it's guns. This summer, it's assault, right? So we've graduated from the water, and here we are. And you can beat up a police officer, and they're setting them up now, as you know. They'll make a call out to a supposed crime. The officer gets there, a couple officers get there. Next thing you know, the officers are in a gunfight, right? Because they're cornered, and they're using, or at least they think they're using military strategy. But as you know, John, there has to be a will by the mayor, by the governor of New York to stamp that out. And if there was a will, there's no question in my mind that the NYPD could shut it down like that. Okay? But
Yeah,
there's no will.
There's no support. They keep passing laws that restrict law enforcement. And the New York City Police Department, I can only speak for this department, and I haven't been part of it in a long time, but I can still speak to it, is the best trained department in the world. There's constant reform. There's constant training on how to handle situations. I'll give you a statistic that I read the other day I couldn't believe. In 2018, the New York City Police Department answered more than 6 million calls. More than 6 million calls. There were 17 adversarial shootouts. 17 out of 6 million calls.
Right.
And they think the police are too aggressive. I mean, you can't, when you look at the statistics, it's a false narrative. Everything that the left is selling is a false narrative. Even if you look at the statistics that are kept by the Washington Post. In 2015, there were 38 unarmed African-American males shot to death by the police nationwide. Last year, there were 9. So obviously, police departments around the country, they re-looked at whatever they were doing, whatever procedures they were using.
Yeah.
They rethought it, they redesigned it, and the number dropped tremendously. And the number of unarmed white males went from 37 to 20. So overall, it went down tremendously.
Yeah.
And you had that one incident with George Floyd, and they were just waiting for something. That was just the end of it. I mean, I thought that, originally, the George Floyd incident really could have been a unifying point in this country. It really could have been, because nobody liked to see that. Nobody wanted to see that. Nothing a good cop hates more than a bad cop. You just don't like it. I mean, it makes your job that much more difficult. It puts your life in danger consistently. You don't want to deal with that. That could have been a point where everybody said, hey, wait a minute. The police agree. The left agree. Everybody agrees that this can't happen. Instead, it went completely the other way. And I heard Mayor Giuliani say this. When that all started in Minneapolis, the first person that threw the brick, you got to lock him up. The second person that throws the brick, you lock him up. The third person doesn't throw the brick.
That's right.
Now it's way out of control at every level. And all they're really doing is waiting for the president to step in, which, of course, he doesn't want to do. I mean, constitutionally, it's really a stretch for him to do that unless the states ask him to do it. And he doesn't want to do it, and they don't want his help. He asks all the time, look, do you need my help? And in the incidents where they have used it, it's worked.
Yeah. Well, here's what it is with the president. It's, he could stamp it as insurrection. Okay.
Yeah,
and if he stamps it insurrection, he doesn't even have to worry about the state, guard. He can send in the National Guard to put a stop to this. But I think in a lot of these Democrat-run cities, I think they want him to do that. They're trying to push him to do that so that they can get the video and the photo op to make President Trump look bad. What they want, what the left wants, they want to be able to show pictures that make it look like the guard or the police is oppressing the people. Okay.
It's optics. All optics.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all optics with these people. They're trying to sell a narrative. And by the way, in regards to this narrative, we talk about this on this show all the time. Everybody knows this. BLM is a Marxist, Maoist movement. They are racist in nature. They are black racist in nature. It was founded by 3 homosexual black women who were part of the Black Liberation Army. They're tied to the Weather Underground, Susan Rosenberg, Thousand Currents. I did a whole show on this, actually 2, where the first part I did with Trevor Loudon, where we connect all the dots. It connects to Islamic Jihad. It connects to the CCP. But the whole goal of these people, they want a race war. They want to defund police. They want America to burn. They hate God, okay? And these people, they want a race war, okay? So let me say something about this, because you brought it up and it's interesting. Number one, they won't burn or riot when a white man is killed. You ever notice that? It's only when a black man or someone black is killed. So by nature, by definition, they are racist, okay? Secondly, if you look at the crime statistics, and I know you know the numbers, and I know the same numbers you cited, first of all, more white people are killed. Second of all, if you look at blacks dying by the gun, by violence, knives, guns, whatever, it's blacks killing blacks. That's where the numbers are. Has nothing to do with it. They can come up with 1 or 2, even 3 or 4 or 5 police shootings, some of which are justified, by the way, but it doesn't matter to them. They want to push this narrative that police are hunting down black men all over the country. They wake up every morning and they go searching for black men to hunt down. It's a lie. It's a big fat lie. Okay. And this is what they're using to turn the population racially against one another, whites versus blacks, trying to divide us. And the truth is, just like in Chicago, okay, and I want to use Chicago as an example because it's real. If you look at the violence that happens every single weekend in Chicago, and it's been happening for a long time, even back when Obama was president, before that, it's blacks killing blacks, right? It's black citizens calling the police on black criminals, right? They don't want to tell you that. They don't want to make it look like there are black people that have had enough, that there are black people that want law and order in their communities. So they perpetuate, and the media stokes the fires and the flames of this stupid lie. And yet it keeps happening. And to get to the crux of the matter, here's what it really is. And after all the shows we've talked about this, here's what it is, John. These people are criminals. And there are white people mixed in there too, with the BLM supporters and the Antifa.
In New York, it's more white than not.
Yeah. And well, there's blacks too.
Yeah.
But the bottom line here is that with all of them that are a part of the violence and the hatred and the burning and the looting, with all of those people, black and white, what they are by nature is a criminal. They are criminals. And what do criminals not want? They don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to go to jail for their crimes, right? They want to be free to commit more crimes and hurt people and take over power. Criminal enterprises, right? So whether it's the Mexican drug cartel or, the Black Liberation Army or the new Black Panther Party or whoever it is, criminally, if they can attain power, then they have a criminal network that there's no accountability for. There's no policing, no special investigations unit like de Blasio took away in New York, no one to challenge their criminal behavior. Does that make sense?
Sure. And the left, the well-financed left, made sure that they zeroed in on many district attorney races around the country and many attorneys general races around the country. And they got people put into power, in charge of criminal justice systems at the state level, that they are not interested in applying the law evenly whatsoever. They pick and choose. In fact, more often than not, they choose not to do anything. And that's a big part of this. They have undermined the rule of law at every level possible to create chaos. That's exactly what they want. What they want is socialism. There's no doubt in my mind. I said that the first day I got into this race. I despise socialism. I said it to you, and I will always say it, because it's anti-liberty, it's anti-freedom, and that's what they hate the most. And everything that they're doing is aimed at destroying the middle class. Everything, whether it's economic, whether it's crime, whether it's defunding the police, it doesn't matter what it is. They want to take away the middle class because the middle class is the least dependent on the government. The wealthy are always the wealthy, and they'll always be the wealthy.
Sure.
For socialism, modern liberalism, whatever you want to call it, for it to work, they need a dependent class. We small government people, we conservatives, we don't want a dependent class. We would prefer everybody to be having a piece of the pie, well earned.
Yeah.
But they need that. And that's why you have somebody like my opponent, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. She comes in, kills the Amazon program, right? The development's 25,000 jobs, votes against the USMCA, which was backed by the AFL-CIO, more union jobs, more manufacturing. Then she comes out against the opportunity zones that Tim Scott and President Trump put in place. We have 11 of those zones in our district. Well, $75 billion worth of private investment into lower income communities that could lift these people out of the lower income community, and they're against all of it. That can be the only reason why, is because they want a dependent class. They need it to survive. Same thing with they want to ban charter schools. Mm-hmm. Education is the great equalizer. They don't like voucher programs. They don't want to give children who are stuck in failing schools a way out, because they need them stuck in failing schools to make sure it's generational. And that's why they're aiming all of this in the same direction. It's to take out the middle class. And it came up very quickly in the view of some, but me and a lot of other people, we've seen it coming for quite a long time, especially in the education system.
Yeah. And look, you know, and another thing we've been talking about recently is BLM now. They have actually infiltrated the teachers' unions, helping them design the curriculum with books like White Fragility.
Oh, no, that 1619 Project, yeah, all of that.
Yeah,
but that's been going on. That's what really a lot of that got its start in the Common Core.
Yeah,
because while everybody was complaining about the math, oh my gosh, I can't do the math with my kid, I don't understand it. That people went on and on and on about it. You had about 3 or 4 companies completely control the textbook industry, and they rewrote all the history books. Yeah, and they redid all the English literature curriculum and took all of the classics out and replaced them with all this anti-American nonsense. And it's been going on for a long time. And people didn't see it coming. I saw it. And we have a state test here in New York State, the New York State history regions. And it's basically, you have to pass it to graduate high school. It's basically become a politically correct Trivial Pursuit game. The people that they include on the test, you know, Margaret Sanger's on the test and Rachel Carson's on the test as Great American Women, and they leave James Madison out of the test.
Right.
And that's what you get. And it's been going on for a long time. And this is basically the cumulative effect.
Well, they you know, many schools around the country don't even teach American history anymore because they don't want the truth to be known. And that's why you look at these kids on TV burning and looting and rioting and all this crap. They don't even know what American history is. So the history they believe that they know is being taught to them by Antifa and BLM and people who want socialism. And look, back to this book, White Fragility, and the 1619 Project, by the way. And thank God we have people like Bob Woodson who are countering that. But this book, White Fragility, really disturbs me because in a lot of these schools, they're making it mandatory reading, required. They don't want the parents to know. They're making parents sign waivers so that if their kid is doing online instruction, that the parents will agree not to step in and see what their child's doing. They don't want their kids, or they don't want the parents to know that their kids are being indoctrinated. They don't want the parents to know that a book like White Fragility, once they do allow instruction back in class, they don't want the parents to know that with that book, what they're going to do is they're going to shame white children in front of black children right there in the class. Okay? How is that promoting equality? How is that promoting unity? How is that promoting America and the ideals that she stands for? That is racism.
Yeah, and it's basically guilt by birth. You know,
right.
I mean, like I said, I'm 60. One of the things that really affected my life early was when Dr. King got assassinated. I mean, that was just, you know, I went through that period. I was 8 years old. Bobby King, you know, Dr. King, but well, first it was Malcolm X. Actually, first it was JFK. I was a little kid. But then you had Malcolm X, and you had Martin Luther King, and then you had Bobby Kennedy. But the Dr. King one, you know, it threw everybody, I thought. Sure. It just threw everybody. And now if you look, you know, I grew up and I was basically taught exactly what Dr. King said. You judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. Well, they basically, if you look at what groups like BLM and the far left has done, they've marginalized Martin Luther King. If you can imagine that, I never thought I would ever see that. When you can marginalize someone so powerful as Dr. King was, and you marginalize his message, you're in dangerous territory. You're in dangerous territory because you're judging what the left does is they try to put everybody in a separate box. They want you as far apart as you can be. Sure. So they preach multiculturalism. I'm very proud of my heritage. My grandparents came from Italy on one side. My grandmother came from Ireland on the other side. I'm very proud of that. But I'm an American.
Yeah.
They want to keep you as far apart from that as they can. So they stress multiculturalism. They think it's more important where you came from than where you are, and they always want to bring up the evil past, even though you had basically nothing to do with it. I was always told as a kid, look, you can look at the past, but don't stare. It's okay to go back and learn, but don't stay there. And that's what we have now is this total undermining of what we used to learn in school as the melting pot theory. Everybody came to the United States. They brought their culture. They threw it into the pot. If you remember America Rocks, the old cartoon that was on in the 60s when we were growing up.
Loved it.
It was the stew. That's what America was a stew.
Yeah.
Everybody threw their own culture into the pot, and this is what we got. We got the American culture. And now they've done everything that they can to undermine that, to separate us at every level. And it hurts me to my core because, there's me and not because it's me, but there's tens of millions like me who basically decided that they were going to serve others with their lives and not look at anybody's race and creed and color and ethnicity or anything else. It's not important. You're there to serve others and to serve the greater good. And to have that undermined by people who just have nothing but hate in their hearts, it really disturbs me tremendously. And I just hope that people can stand up and say, okay, enough. And you need people on every side to do it. It can't just be one group. It's got to be a cumulative group of people.
Yeah, and I'm going to say a couple things here. Number one, I go back to this criminality because at its core, that's what this is about. This is about thuggery, criminality, criminals not wanting to be held accountable for doing what they're doing in the streets. Think about it. If you can go in and grab a Gucci bag and a Rolex and brand new Nikes and don't have to pay for them, and nobody's going to stop you, okay? And that, then why would you pay for them? Okay? And what that turns us into is the Wild West. Now, you see more BLM doing that, black people doing the looting. And then with the burning, you see black and white. And then with the violence towards the police, I see more white than black. But what they all have in common is that, number one, they're criminals. Number two, those white people who are, let's say, Antifa, they hate people like you and I. We're also white people. So they're racist towards us, just like they'd be racist towards anyone in military personnel, anyone who has an R beside their name, or conservative, or Christian, anybody from Middle America, anybody that supports President Trump, anybody that doesn't agree with their views. Automatically you're the enemy, right? And then amongst the black people, you have black people hating black people. You saw Chief Doran over in St. Louis murdered, just trying to guard his friend's store during the riots. They shot him in the head. So he was black. He got shot. It doesn't matter. If you don't agree with them, or if you're a Republican or a conservative, or if you support President Trump or military, law enforcement of any kind, any of those things, Christian, Catholic, if you hate abortion, any of these issues, and I can go down the list, then you're going to be a target. It's cancel culture. They're going to come after you. They'll burn your house down. They'll murder you if no one steps in or if you don't defend yourself. Now, I want to say this because you had mentioned it earlier, and I didn't get to touch on it yet. You brought up the opportunity zones. Okay. I work with Leon Benjamin. He's running for Congress out of Virginia. And also Joe Collins, who's running for Congress out of California. He's running against Maxine Waters. Okay. These guys, all part of the opportunity zones. We have a men's ministry called the First Hour for Men. And the idea is it's a 30-day study to bring young men, boys to God, because God has been taken out of our schools. It's been taken out of the public square. The Democrats banned God. They banned God from our Pledge of Allegiance just a couple weeks ago. They banned God from their charter at the 2012 DNC on national TV. But they banned God just a couple weeks ago from the Pledge of Allegiance, from our national anthem. Okay, who bans God? When you ban God, you're done. There's nowhere to start from, number one. Number two, look at the fatherless issue. In the Black community, it's 74%. That's 3 out of every 4 homes in the Black community that doesn't have a father. In the white community, it's closing in on half. The same with the Hispanic community. So if you go back to the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, all of those percentages were under 3, 2, 1%. It was non-existent. Now it's a national crisis. And so when you talk about opportunity zones, and I've been talking to Leon, talking to Joe, talking to you, we want to employ the first hour and bring it into these opportunity zones. And I don't care if the Democrats don't like it. Tough. We want the young men, the boys, to have a choice, right?
Yeah.
Let it be their choice. Do you want a life of misery and crime with the Democrats, or do you want real opportunity and real hope? Because we can bring it for real on the ground. And I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I was speaking the other night that we were at the intersection of lawlessness and godlessness. That's where we are. And when you don't have any accountability with the criminal justice system, because Democrats, people on the left, have chosen not to enforce the laws either evenly or at all, and then you have no conscience because you don't believe in anything that's bigger or better than you or more important than you, you have people with no conscience whatsoever. And that's why when you look at these protesters, rioters, thugs,
right.
When you look at them, most of them, not the peaceful protesters, nothing I love better about this country than peaceful protests. It's a beautiful thing. But when you get into the rioting and you see these groups, the one thing that you see, no matter what the color of their skin is the emptiness in their eyes. They're just blank. It's like looking through something, and it's because there's nothing there. There's no conscience. There's no accountability from the law that we have put in place, and we're very fortunate that we get to create our own laws, obviously. But there's no accountability there to a greater power than yourself, and that's a dangerous spot to be in.
Yeah, and on top of that, John, there's no accountability at home. Okay, like I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, elementary school, junior high school, if I got in trouble at school, they had corporal punishment. You'd get your butt paddled by the principal. Okay, well, guess what? They also call your parents. Okay, and when I went home, guess who I'd have to deal with?
You get it again, yeah.
I'd have to wait for dad to get home from work, and I'd get my butt spanked again. And you want to know what? I thank my parents now. My dad died a few years ago, but my mom's still alive. And when they were both together and alive and healthy and thriving, and I'm thankful I did this, I thanked them. I thanked them for instilling discipline and morals and values and courtesy. You know, my parents taught me, when you're talking to your elders, you say, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. There's an amount of respect that you have. And look, I came from a military family. I mean, my dad's father, he served in World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam on a sub. And my mom's father, same thing. So, you know, discipline, fathers in the home, not God being non-existent. We've got to get that back, because without that, there's nothing. Like you said, that blank stare that you see, that blank stare is there because there is nothing there. They don't believe in anything.
No, they don't. And the one thing that they lack, obviously, at a lot of levels is structure. One of the reasons that we still do what we do where I teach is that we provide structure for these young men. It's an all-boys school. It's 88% minority. 40% of my students live in the poorest congressional district in the United States. That's the neighboring District 15. We graduate 90% of our students with a full Regents diploma in 4 years. And the reason that parents sacrifice to send them there is because they realize that young men in particular need structure. You need structure. And obviously, we have the religious component too, which is great. One of the things we do is everybody's involved in community service. Community service is a gift. And one of the great things about that is when you tell a kid, hey, you're going to do some community service, they're like, yeah. And then when they do it and they realize how good it feels to do something for somebody else, to get outside of yourself, that there's something greater than you, there's no better feeling. And that's why institutions like ours and other institutions around the country that do the same thing, they're the ones that turn out people of service. And that's what we've always done at my school. And like I said, there's schools all over the place that do that. But when you get into public education, I think too many of the systems have gotten further and further and further away from all of that.
Yeah.
I understand that you're not going to preach religious doctrine in a public school, but one, you don't have to ignore the presence of God. And two, you don't have to ignore the idea that the people that are around you are just as important, if not as more important than you are, that you need to serve. Yeah, you need to serve. It's not all about you.
That's right.
It's not all about, it's the me. It's not what it's about. It's not about
that's right.
At all.
And also, if you're not going to have God, prevalent, then that doesn't mean that you bring in Sharia law, Islamic jihadism, or BLM or Marxism. You don't substitute God for one of those things. Okay. And on top of that, look, I saw this a couple weeks ago, posted it, and I don't have the story in front of me right now, but there was a Catholic church where this priest gets up, he bows to BLM, and it just stunned me, and it stunned all of my followers and our audience, people on social media. I started getting feedback from people, they couldn't believe it. So some of these Catholic churches and Christian churches, different denominations, where the church has split between, the authentic word of God versus this new revisionist history. Some of these people are trying to bring this Marxism, this socialism, this BLM stuff into the church. And I pray that it does not bleed into the Catholic schools, the Christian schools, or the charter schools, and books like White Fragility that I was talking about. When that starts to happen, we're in big trouble. There's got to be pushback right now against that so that it doesn't come to that. Thank God this week, was it not yesterday, day before yesterday, President Trump, I'm sure you heard about this, they have these white culture, white shaming, like mandatory conferences that they make people go to that work for different corporations.
Right.
And now it's bleeding into the FBI and even people that guard our nuclear missiles, where they make them go and learn about their white privilege and shame them. And I don't know if you saw this, but President Trump said, no. We're not doing that. We're ending those programs now. And that is what has to happen with a loud voice across the board. Schools, churches, neighborhoods, say no with a loud voice.
Yeah, and I think that's why this election is the most important election of our lifetime. I don't even think it's arguable. When I first voted for president in 1980, I was 20. It was Carter versus Reagan. And I was told that that was the most important one, and it probably was. But this is way, way beyond that. This is for the future of the nation. And I think we have to speak up at the ballot box on November 3rd. And not just with my election, but across the board. Socialism needs to be stopped in its tracks. I mean, if you value your liberty, if you value your freedom, if you value your choices in life, then you have to stop. We could disagree on social issues. That's great. And I love the debate. But whether or not you're entitled to the fruits of your labor is not up for debate. It's not. And that's who we are as a people. And that's what has to be stopped. And that's really where the whole mindset of, I can take that because big business can absorb that. No. You're entitled to the fruits of your labor and nothing else. That's right. It. Now, is there a social safety net? Absolutely. We're a very philanthropic people. We take care of people who fall down and we need to get back up. You're not supposed to stay there your whole life. But there is a social safety net for that. But you are not entitled to the fruit of anybody else's labor. And when you look, if for the people who are trying to basically, disassemble Christianity in general, Jesus was not a socialist. You can look up and down in the Testament. It doesn't say anything about taking the fruit of somebody else's labor. In fact, you go back to the Old Testament, that's called thou shalt not steal. Just because the government's doing it doesn't mean it's not theft.
That's right. And look, you're right, John. This is down the ballot across the board, across the United States, in New York City. Races like yours against AOC. The New York people, the New Yorkers, they have to say, we're not going to do this. We're not going to allow this. AOC's got to go. Or, Jerry Nadler's got to go. Or Maxine Waters got to go. Or Pelosi. Or Matsui. Or Tlaib. It doesn't matter what state it is, what city it is. Voters need to understand that this election, you're talking about making a decision on how your life is going to be. And if you vote Democrat for any position, you are putting your freedom in jeopardy. So I encourage everybody down the ballot to vote Republican this election, not only for President Trump, but for John Cummings in New York City against AOC. Get her out, okay? And same thing across the board. By the way, I've got John's website. It's been scrolling at the bottom of the screen during our whole interview. Go to Cummings2020.com. Get involved with John's campaign. Contribute. Help him knock on doors. Help him make phone calls. Do everything in your power, New York, and everywhere else. You don't even have to live in New York. Get on the phone. Get on the website. Help John's campaign. You say you're tired of AOC. Here's your chance to do something about it. Let's get her out. I've had it with her.
Yeah, you and a lot of people that are in this district too. That's the one thing that it's woefully underreported by the media. They just do not think that any Republican would have a shot in this district. But as I've said from the beginning, this is a heavily Democrat district. It's not a heavily socialist district. It's people who have big investments in these communities, whether it's their homes, their businesses, or both, and they do not want to lose their health insurance. They do not want to lose their 401ks. They do not want unsafe streets. They don't want bad schools. They've made an investment. They want to stay. They want to stick it out. And there are plenty of people who have contacted our campaign who are Democrats and saying, how can we help you out?
Good.
How can we help you out? People who would never, ever vote for somebody with an R before their name are now looking at us and saying, you know what? This is different. And we need more people like that.
Let me ask you, John, how's the ground game there? Even with the virus and the lockdowns, are you guys able to get out and knock on doors, phone calls, that kind of stuff?
It's good. Yeah. The phone banks obviously are important. I'll be honest with you. Digital advertising is unbelievable. The amount of people that it reaches, not just compared to television, et cetera. That's been a big part of it. We do get out into the neighborhoods as much as we can. There are still certain events in the neighborhood, outdoor events that we go to. We go out, we give out signs, we meet people. You just walk the streets and talk to people. That's really all you can do. So far, it's pretty tough to stand at the subway stop. You can't, there's no kissing babies and shaking hands. That's not happening. And the other thing is the schools aren't open here yet, so you can't even go sit outside school and talk to parents. And like I said before, I don't know exactly how many kids are actually going to return to school, not because of the COVID necessarily, but because of the streets are unsafe.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I know a lot of parents that are going to be homeschooling their kids now, and it has zero to do with the virus. It has to do with their kids' safety, and it mainly has to do with the fact, not only the safety aspect of it, but they don't want their kids being indoctrinated. They just don't. They're not going to tolerate it. And as more parents find out what's really going on, you're going to see more exodus on that. By the way, I want to mention a couple things. We got about 4 minutes left. I know that, free markets, free society, opportunity, and we mentioned the opportunity zones for people to get out of poverty, out of this mindless socialist crap that has become invasive in not only communities around the country, but in our schools. We want to be able to give opportunity to people. And I know that you're a firm believer in that. And I want to say kudos to you for that. Hopefully we can get rid of de Blasio and Cuomo as well. Infrastructure, the homeless problem in New York. These are problems that are also on the table that someone like de Blasio is not going to be able to fix. He's using the subways to let people go in and take a crap, okay, and live so that, people that need to ride the subway to get to work can't even ride the darn thing. It's insane.
Yeah, you know what happened with that? With everybody's like, where did all these homeless people come from? They're all over the streets. You have tents on Park Avenue and 53rd Street. There are tents. They say, where did these people come from? They were all living in the subway. So it was impossible to take the subway. It was horrible. They were all living in the subway, and now that they're going and clean the subways because of the COVID, those people had to go somewhere, and they're out in the street. It's unbelievable because they don't address the problem. They never do. They just kick it down to the next person. I mean, most of these people they're mentally ill. And you feel for them as parts of society. There's nowhere for them to go. Is there a criminal element? Absolutely. Is there substance abuse involved? Absolutely. But a lot of them are mentally ill, and they were people that, years ago we would have quote unquote warehoused. We've obviously graduated from that. But when they did away with the warehousing of mental patients, they never built the replacements. They never built them. They never did anything with it.
That's a great point, John. And as a conservative, I think that's one thing that we should tackle. I think that we should take a look and revisit the mental health situation in regards to, for not only for our safety, but for their safety and for their just ability to live. I think we need to invest in either more hospitals or warehousing for these people so that they're not out in public doing the things that they're doing, making it hard on themselves, making it hard on us, but to give them a chance through medication, through supervision, to be able to live a decent life, even if it is under supervision. Because what they're living now, it's pathetic. It's a disgrace. And look, we talked about this earlier. Legal immigration, during World War II, pre-World War II, the millions of people that came to this country that saw the Statue of Liberty, give us your tired, give us your hungry. Those people, and the left tries to hijack this, those people came here to work. Those people came here for opportunity. They weren't like Al Sharpton looking to come over here and then as soon as they get here, start with the grievance industry crap where they're complaining about this and that and the other thing. Look, your dad, my dad, my grandfather, your grandfather, those men, they built this country. They didn't whine. They didn't complain. They went out and worked, and they built And their neighborhoods, people talked to one another. They got along. But we built things, right? We were a country that had pride. People loved this country. They loved our military. They backed it. They would never do the things that these people are doing today. People like my grandfathers, even my father, they're rolling over in their grave right now. If they only knew, looking down from heaven. Look, legal immigration is great. And we allow 700,000 to 900,000 legal immigrants every year. And legal immigration gets a big thumbs up, especially for the people that want to come here and they want to, be a part of America. Take someone like Omar. She comes here. We rescue her. We save her from death. We bring her. We give her a lifeline. We bring her here. This woman, she gets elected to Congress from Minnesota, and then she wants to install Sharia law, the thing that destroyed the very country that we saved her from. She wants to ruin America. How do you vote for someone like this?
Yeah, I really don't know. And I've asked this question before. You have people like Congresswoman Omar and my opponent, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman Tlaib, and there's people throughout, and even in the Senate. How do you raise your right hand, put your hand on the Bible or whatever they put their hands on, and swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and then act the way you act?
That's right.
It obviously means nothing to them. So your only intent is to disrupt what we have in this country. I said this from the beginning of my campaign: distract, disrupt, divide. That's what the left does.
That's what they do.
That's the three Ds. That's what they want to do. And the oath means absolutely nothing to them. I have to wonder if they've ever even read the Constitution. I teach the Constitution to my students. I teach the Bill of Rights to my students. My students know why what is in the Bill of Rights is in there. They know what happened to the colonists at the hands of the British that made them put certain things in there, like searches and seizures and the writs of assistance during the colonial period, all of that. My guys know that stuff. Then we have people in high office that I can guarantee you have never read the Constitution, nor were they ever inclined to read the Constitution. They don't care about this country, and they need to be out of office as soon as possible.
Yeah, and by the way, that's to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Okay, and someone like Tlaib or Omar or AOC or Presley, they are enemies of the state. They are Islamic jihadists. They are Marxists. They are racists. They try to use the Statue of Liberty and the saying, "Oh, give us you're tired, you're hungry." They've hijacked that message. That is not the message of our forefathers that came to America and didn't bitch and complain. They came here to build something, to work. They didn't join the grievance industry to complain about everything. They worked their butts off to build something, to create a family, to give their families the American dream. That's not what the squad is about, and that's not what AOC is about. John, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I hope that you'll come back, update us on how the race is going, and I pray that New Yorkers and people from across the country will get out and get on John's website. Again, contribute, help him in funding. If you can make calls for him, if you can go door to door for him, get involved. Now is your chance to get AOC out. So if she stays in Congress, it's on you. You have the opportunity to get her out and send a great patriot, a smart man, an educator like John Cummings, who teaches American history, who teaches our laws. You want law and order, America? Here's your chance. I want you to elect John Cummings to Congress and get AOC out. John, thanks for joining us on Indivisible with John Stubbins, and we'll be glad to have you back again, brother.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you, John.
God bless you. And thank you for joining us, America. We'll see you tomorrow, where we're going to have another member of the squad. We've got Talib's opponent coming on. Should be a great, great show. Until then, God bless you. Kiss your families. Love on them. And do everything you can to uphold the American dream and make sure that you get out and vote for John Cummings.